There are dramas that start with a premise you think you've seen before. Contract marriage. Fake relationship. Two people agreeing to perform something for the outside world that doesn't exist in their private one. You've seen this setup. You know how it usually goes. And then a drama takes that familiar premise and does something unexpected with it. Something that makes you realize the setup was never really the point, that the setup was just the door. And what's inside the door is something with real weight to it. That's what happened with this one. So today we're talking about Lian Ming and Lu Yanning, a contract marriage that starts as a business arrangement and becomes something neither of them planned for. A family that turns out to be far more dangerous than anyone expected, and a woman who starts the story being used as a pawn and ends it holding all the cards. Let's get into it. Lian Ming's family is in financial trouble. Real trouble, the kind that doesn't have an easy solution, the kind that has been building for longer than anyone admitted. And when a family is in that kind of trouble, decisions get made. Decisions that should involve everyone affected and often don't. Decisions that prioritize the survival of the institution over the well-being of the individuals inside it. The decision her family makes is this. Lian Ming will sign a contract. An unequal one. The kind of agreement you sign when you don't have leverage, when the people on the other side of the table have something you need and you don't have equivalent currency to offer. She signs it. She doesn't have a lot of choice. And what the contract leads to is a marriage, a contract marriage, specifically with Lu Yanning. The terms are clear from the beginning. Outside the walls of their private life, they are husband and wife. Convincingly, completely, without visible seams. Inside those walls, they are two separate people who happen to share a space and a legal arrangement. No relationship, no expectations. No crossing of the line that has been drawn between performance and reality. This is what they agreed to. This is where they start. I want to talk about what it actually means to live inside that kind of arrangement. Because it's easy to describe the premise in a few words and move on to the plot, but I think the texture of it is worth dwelling on for a moment. You are sharing a home with someone. You eat meals in proximity to them. You are aware of their presence in the morning and in the evening. You observe the small habits and rituals that make up a person's private life. You know things about them that their colleagues and social contacts don't know. You see them when they're tired, when they're frustrated, when they're not performing for anyone. And you are supposed to remain separate. You have agreed to remain separate. The line is clear and you are both, in theory, committed to not crossing it. But the line exists inside a life that is being lived in close quarters. And lives have a way of bleeding across lines that were drawn in theory rather than tested in practice. She notices things about him. She doesn't want to notice them, doesn't find it convenient or useful to notice them, but they accumulate anyway. The way he handles specific situations. The way he speaks to people differently in different contexts. The gap between how he presents in public and who he appears to be when there's no audience. These things are not things you can choose not to observe when you're living with someone. They enter your understanding of them, whether you invite them in or not. And he notices things about her. Her steadiness in situations that would rattle most people. The way she moves through difficulty without broadcasting it. Her honesty, especially her honesty. The way she says real things instead of comfortable things, which is rarer than it should be, and which he clearly registers. He starts paying attention to her in ways that the contract did not require and that he did not initially intend. This is how it begins. Not with a decision, not with a moment, with the quiet accumulation of observation. Now, you sing. Every complicated present has a complicated past. And Lian Ming's complicated past has a name and a face and a presence in her current professional life. Yusing is her former partner, someone with whom she has real history, the kind of history that doesn't dissolve just because circumstances change. And he has not resolved his feelings about what happened between them. He wants her back. This is not ambiguous. He watches the arrangement between Li Ming and Lu Yanning with the specific attention of someone who has a stake in what it means, someone who is calculating whether there are openings, whether the distance between them is closable, whether what he lost is retrievable. And then he sees something he didn't expect. He sees Lu Yanning being present for her in ways that the contract doesn't require. He sees the specific quality of attention that Lu Yanning gives her, the way he positions himself in her vicinity, the small choices that add up to something that looks, from the outside, less and less like performance. Yusing is not a man who handles this with particular grace. The Cold War that develops between him and Lu Yanning is real, and it shows up in professional contexts where neither of them can afford to be openly hostile. They are on the same project. They have to collaborate. They have to sit in the same rooms and make decisions together and present a functional working relationship to the people around them. They do it. But the tension underneath every professional interaction is palpable. And Li Ming, caught between the two of them, has to navigate the ordinary demands of her work in an environment where her personal history and her current arrangement are both present and both charged. She handles this better than most people would. Not without effort, not without moments where the weight of it shows. But she handles it, because handling difficult things is something she has been doing for long enough that she has developed real capability for it. What she has not yet discovered is how much more difficult things are about to get. The fraud. I said earlier that the discovery happens accidentally, during ordinary work, and that's true. But I want to talk about the specific shape of what she discovers, because the details matter. It's not just financial irregularity in the abstract. It's specific people making specific choices to take money that wasn't theirs and to conceal those movements through a pattern of transactions that was designed to be difficult to trace. Her uncle, members of her family who she trusted, people whose presence in her life she associated with belonging and safety and the particular comfort of being known by someone over a long period of time. They have been stealing from the company, and they have been doing something else as well, something that in some ways feels even more personal than the financial crime. They have been arranging things, her mother, her grandfather, the people with legitimate authority over the family's assets, so that Li Ming would be excluded. Cut out. The inheritance and the position in the family that should, by any fair accounting, belong to her, redirected through a careful architecture of manipulation and false information toward people who wanted it for themselves. She was in the way. And the solution they arrived at was not to deal with her directly, but to maneuver the people around her into positions where they would make decisions that removed her from the picture without understanding what they were doing or why. She was a pawn, not just in the contract arrangement. In her own family, the people who were supposed to be on her side had decided, at some point, that their interests and her interests were not the same thing, and they had chosen their interests. And they had done it in a way that kept their hands relatively clean while the damage landed on her. When she understands this, when the full picture assembles itself from the documents and the numbers and the connections between accounts, she does something that I find genuinely moving about her character. She doesn't fall apart. Or rather, she allows herself to fall apart for exactly as long as she can afford to, and then she stops. She lets the grief and the shock and the anger move through her, and then she begins to think about what comes next. What comes next is Lu Yanning. He finds out, or she tells him. The drama gives us this moment of transfer, of her deciding to let him into the full truth of what she's found, of trusting him with something that is deeply personal and potentially dangerous. And this is the moment when I think you see most clearly who she has become in the context of this arrangement. At the beginning of the story, she would not have done this. She was managing everything alone, holding everything carefully, not allowing anyone access to the vulnerable parts of the situation. She trusts him now, not because she decided to, because he earned it. Slowly, through specific behavior, through the repeated experience of him showing up when it would have been easier not to, through learning who he actually is in the private spaces of their shared life. He earned it, and she can no longer honestly pretend he hasn't. He responds the way he always responds to her specific needs, practically, directly, without excessive sentiment. He tells her what he's going to do about it. Not asks, tells. Because he has already decided. The question of whether to be involved was settled before she finished telling him what was happening. What they build together, the plan, the trap, the careful construction of a situation in which the people who have been operating in darkness are drawn into a space where the light can reach them, requires exactly the kind of partnership they have developed over the course of this arrangement. It requires trust. It requires honesty. It requires each of them to do the part they're best suited to without needing the other person to explain why it matters. The plan involves disinformation, feeding false information to the people who have been acting against her, allowing them to move based on what they think they know, and then catching them in that movement. It's elegant in the way that good plans are elegant, not complicated for the sake of complication, but precisely calibrated to exploit the specific vulnerabilities of the specific people being targeted. Her family members think they know more than she knows. They think she's been kept in the dark and that she will remain in the dark because they've controlled the information around her carefully. They think she is still the pawn they placed in the arrangement. That assumption, that miscalculation about who she is and what she knows, is what undoes them, because she has Liu Yanning. And Liu Yanning has resources and connections and a strategic intelligence that they did not account for when they were planning around her. They thought they understood her situation. They didn't understand the half of it. The confrontation, when it comes, when she stands in front of the people who deceived her and lays out what she knows and what she has and what it means, is the moment the drama has been building toward from the beginning. And it delivers it well. She is not angry in the theatrical sense. She's something more controlled than anger, which is more frightening. She has the documentation. She has the evidence. She has Liu Yanning standing somewhere nearby in the specific way he stands, when he's letting her have the floor, while also being completely present if she needs anything. She has everything she needs, and she uses it. She names what happened. She explains what was done and who did it and how. She makes it impossible to deny, impossible to reframe, impossible to make smaller than it actually was. The people who used her as a pawn discover that the pawn has been watching, that the pawn knew more than they gave her credit for, that the pawn, it turns out, was playing a different game than the one they thought they were in. The unmasking is complete, and it is hers. Not Liu Yanning's victory, not an external intervention that saves her. Hers, built on her discovery, her decision about what to do with it, her plan, her willingness to face the people who betrayed her directly and say the true thing out loud. That matters. In a different drama, this moment might belong to the male lead. He might be the one who delivers the evidence and makes the accusations while she watches. This drama gives the moment to her, which is right, which is the only way it makes sense given who she is and what she's been through to get here. After the confrontation, after the unmasking, after the evidence has been placed in the appropriate hands and the people responsible for what happened are facing the consequences of that, after all of it, there is something left to figure out. Liu Yanning and Lian Ming have a contract marriage. The contract had terms. Those terms were about the family financial situation and about the business arrangement and about the external performance they agreed to maintain. Those terms were, in theory, the entire substance of the relationship. But something happened inside those terms. Something that was not in the contract and was not planned for. Something that both of them have been aware of for a while, and that neither of them has addressed directly, because addressing it directly would require acknowledging that the line they drew at the beginning has moved significantly. She understands something now that she didn't understand before. She understands that Liu Yanning, from very early in their arrangement, was protecting her, not just complying with the contract, not just maintaining his end of a deal, actively, deliberately, quietly protecting her, watching what was happening around her, understanding more of it than he let on, choosing to be in her corner before she'd given him any explicit reason to choose that. The contract marriage was real in a way she didn't know. He had real reasons for wanting to be in this arrangement with her specifically, and those reasons had nothing to do with business and everything to do with her, with who she was, with what she was trying to do, with his decision, made at some point that the drama shows us rather than announces, that she was worth protecting. She was never just a pawn to him. She was never just a party to an arrangement. He saw her, actually saw her, in a specific way that is different from simply observing someone. And what he saw made him decide something. The misunderstanding between them, The version of the arrangement they were each operating under that didn't match the reality of what was happening resolves in the way that these things resolve when both people are finally ready to say the true thing. Not dramatically, not with grand declarations, with honesty. With the specific quality of honesty that two people arrive at when they have spent enough time in each other's company that the performance has become unnecessary and the truth is just easier. The fake marriage becomes real, not by some official act or ceremony or announcement, by the simple recognition of what it already was, by two people who have lived alongside each other, through something real deciding that they would like to continue living alongside each other, not because of a contract, but because of what they actually are to each other. That's the ending. And it's the right ending for this story. Now let me step back and talk about what makes this drama work as well as it does. The premise, contract marriage, is genuinely one of the most used setups in the drama genre. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of stories built on this foundation. So when you encounter another one, you're bringing a lot of prior experience to it. You have pattern expectations. You know certain beats are coming. And part of what makes or breaks a drama with a familiar premise is whether it does something real with the setup or whether it just goes through the motions. This drama does something real with it. The reason is Lian Ming. Specifically, the fact that she is written as a full person rather than as a vehicle for the romance plot. Her story has genuine stakes that exist independently of the love story. Her family situation, the betrayal she uncovers, the fight she chooses to have about it. These things would matter and be compelling even if Lu Yanning weren't in the picture. The romance is layered on top of a story that already has weight, which means the romance carries that weight rather than substituting for it. That's the difference between a drama that uses a contract marriage as a premise and a drama that uses a contract marriage as a structural element in a story that's actually about something. This one is the second kind. Lian Ming's character arc is also well designed. She starts the story in a position of relative powerlessness. Her family has put her in a contract she didn't fully choose. She's navigating a professional environment where her personal history is present and complicated. She doesn't yet know the full extent of what's being done around her. By the end of the story, she is the one who has the power, who has the evidence, who delivers the truth to the people who need to face it. That movement, from pawn to player, from managed to managing, is earned through specific things she does throughout the drama, not just handed to her by plot mechanics. Lu Yanning is also written with more care than this type of character usually gets. The cold exterior hiding genuine feeling male lead is a type. The drama knows it's a type, and it does the work to make him specific within that type. His protectiveness has texture. It's not just generic possession or generic hero behavior. It's rooted in specific observations he's made about her, specific decisions he's made about who she is and what she deserves. The feeling he develops is connected to the specific person she is, not just to the narrative role she fills. Yusing's role in the drama is also handled with some sophistication. He's not simply the obstacle or the villain. He's a person who genuinely had feelings for Lian Ming and who is genuinely struggling with what it means to watch her be with someone else, even in the context of an arrangement. His jealousy is real. His desire to get her back is real. The Cold War with Lu Yanning is real. And while he's not the character we're rooting for, the drama gives him enough humanity that he doesn't feel like a cardboard antagonist. What I found most interesting about the dynamic between the three of them is that the drama understands something true about how we process complicated emotional situations at work. The professional context doesn't neutralize the personal one. If anything, it intensifies it because you have to maintain functionality while feeling things you're not allowed to fully express in that context. The effort of that management is visible in all three characters in different ways, and it feels true. Let me talk about the family betrayal one more time, because I think it's the most emotionally ambitious element of the drama. Most dramas that use a conspiracy plot are primarily interested in the mechanics of the conspiracy. Who did what? How is it concealed? What's the evidence? How do we expose it? The plot moves through these questions efficiently, sometimes at the expense of the emotional reality of what it means to be betrayed by people you love. This drama doesn't skip the emotional reality. It lets Lian Ming actually experience what it means to understand that her uncle, her family members, people who had been permanent fixtures of her sense of where she came from, that these people made choices about her that were governed by their own interests rather than any genuine care for her. It lets that land. It sits with the specific quality of that kind of grief, which is different from grief over loss and different from ordinary betrayal, because it requires you to revise so much of your history. When you love someone and then learn they've wronged you, you have to figure out what to do with the love that was real alongside the wrong that was real. You can't simply subtract one from the other. Both facts are true simultaneously, and you have to carry that. The drama gives Lian Ming space to carry it, which is what I mean when I say it handles the emotional reality rather than just the plot mechanics. And that space, that acknowledgement that this is genuinely devastating even as she moves forward, is part of what makes her feel like a real person rather than a dramatic function. My overall rating for this drama is a 9 out of 10, and I don't give 9s easily. The premise is familiar, but the execution is specific and emotionally grounded in ways that familiar premises often aren't. The central character is real in all the ways that matter. The romance is earned. The conspiracy is satisfying. The ending is right. If you like dramas where the female lead is the actual protagonist rather than the recipient of the plot, this is one to watch. If you like slow burn romance that develops through behavior rather than declaration, this delivers that. If you like stories where the emotional stakes are real and treated with respect, this is your drama. And if you have a complicated relationship with the contract marriage premise, if you've seen enough of them to be slightly tired of it, I'd say give this one a try anyway. Because what's inside the familiar door is something worth finding. Drop your thoughts in the comments if you've seen it. Tell me the moment that hit you hardest. Tell me whether you saw the family twist coming. Tell me whether you were Team Lu Yanning from the beginning or whether it took you a while. And if you're new here and this was the first video of mine you've watched, I'm glad you found it. Subscribe if you want more, like if it was worth your time. See you in the next one. Now I want to go back to something I mentioned earlier and spend more time on it, because I think it's the most important thing to understand about this drama, and I rushed past it. The contract, not the document itself. The idea of the contract, what it represents, what it does to two people who agree to it, and why it is simultaneously a practical solution and a deeply human problem. When two people make an agreement like this, we will perform closeness without feeling it, we will present intimacy without experiencing it, we will be husband and wife to the outside world and strangers to each other in private. They are drawing a line inside their own experience. They're saying, this part of life is real, and this other part is theater, and we both agree to know the difference. The problem is that human beings are not good at maintaining those lines over time, especially not when the theater takes place in the most intimate contexts. Your home, your mornings, the moments between performance when you're just two people in a space without an audience. Lian Ming and Lu Yanning agreed to a clean separation between the performance and the reality. And what the drama traces, slowly, carefully, without announcing it too loudly, is the process by which that separation becomes impossible to maintain. Not because either of them decides to abandon it, because life inside a shared space doesn't respect the boundaries that documents establish. She sees him solve a problem, not a grand dramatic problem, an ordinary one, something practical that he handles in a way that is efficient and considered. And she thinks something about him based on that. Not a feeling exactly, just information, just an update to her understanding of who he is. He watches her in a meeting. He watches the way she thinks through something difficult in real time, the way she chooses her words, the way she handles the specific kind of professional pressure that this situation involves. And he thinks something about her. Just information, just an update. These updates accumulate, and at some point the accumulation becomes something different from information. It becomes something that influences behavior, that influences what he's willing to do for her beyond what the contract required. That influences what she's willing to trust him with beyond what the arrangement specified. The contract drew a line, and life walked right across it without either of them formally deciding to let that happen. I think this is true of many relationships, by the way, not specifically contract marriages. Obviously, that's a dramatic construct, but the underlying dynamic. We make agreements, formal or informal, about what a relationship is and what it isn't. We establish terms, expectations, understandings about where the boundaries are. And then we live inside those terms for long enough, and the living changes things. The reality of the actual human interaction reshapes the framework we built around it. Sometimes that's uncomfortable. Sometimes the framework needed to change and didn't want to. Sometimes you end up somewhere different from where you agreed to go, and you have to figure out what to do about it. In this story, where they end up is real, and figuring out what to do about it turns out to be the most important conversation of both their lives. Let me also talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough in drama reviews, which is the moment of emotional breakdown and what it reveals about a character. Lian Ming breaks down when she fully understands what her family has done. I mentioned this earlier, but I want to be more specific about why it matters. Drama characters in her position, the competent, composed, mission-driven female lead, often exist in a relationship with emotional expression that is slightly inhuman. They are strong all the time, or they cry briefly and then return immediately to strength, or their breakdown is staged in a way that feels designed to demonstrate vulnerability without actually lingering in it. The breakdown is a beat in the pacing rather than a genuine human experience. This drama does something different. It gives Lian Ming's breakdown real time. It sits with it. It allows her to actually be in the state of having discovered something terrible before asking her to be okay enough to act. And that time, that space, does something important for the drama's emotional credibility. Because if she processed this in 30 seconds and was immediately strategic and functional, you would believe in her competence, but you would stop believing in her humanity. And the drama needs you to believe in her humanity because the whole emotional arc, her growing relationship with Lu Yanning, her pain about her family, the significance of the final confrontation, depends on her being a person with real feelings, not just a narrative function who happens to be doing things that look like having real feelings. She gets to be human, completely, messily, genuinely human for a moment. And then she gets to be strong again. And the strength is more believable because of the humanness that preceded it. This is what good drama writing looks like. Not protecting the protagonist from emotional reality, but letting them move through it in a way that we recognize as true. Now let me talk about the ending more specifically, because I think the ending is one of the things this drama does most right, and it's worth examining why. The fake marriage becomes real. That's where the story lands. And you might think, of course it does, that's where every contract marriage story lands, that's the genre. And you'd be correct that it's a genre expectation. But there's a difference between arriving at a genre endpoint through rote mechanics and arriving there because the story has done the actual emotional work to make it feel inevitable and true. This drama does the actual work. By the time Lian Ming and Lu Yanning arrive at the recognition that the fake marriage is something real, you have watched them build that reality through specific actions and specific moments over the whole arc of the story. You've watched him protect her from things she didn't know were threats. You've watched her trust him more each time. He proved trustworthy. You've watched both of them make choices that exceeded what the contract required because they had become people to each other rather than parties to an agreement. So when the fake becomes real, when they acknowledge what has been true for a while, it doesn't feel like a genre endpoint. It feels like an honest accounting of what has actually happened between them, which is a completely different emotional experience. The love story is real because the drama made it real through labor, through specificity, through the accumulated weight of two people actually knowing each other. And that's rare enough that it deserves to be called out. One more thing I want to say before we wrap up, about what this story is underneath all the plot. This is a story about a woman who is placed in an impossible situation by people who should have protected her, and who found her way out of that situation through her own intelligence and effort, and the willingness to trust the one person who actually showed up for her. It's a story about the difference between the people who claim to be on your side and the people who actually are, about how that difference is only revealed through behavior, through choices made under pressure, through the moments when it would have been easier to walk away, and someone doesn't walk away. Her family claimed to be on her side. They were managing her for their own benefit. Lu Yanning entered her life as a party to a business arrangement. He ended up being the person who stood beside her when it actually mattered. You don't always know which is which at the beginning. You find out over time. And Lian Ming finds out over the course of this drama. And what she does with that knowledge, who she chooses to trust, who she chooses to fight alongside, who she turns to when the floor drops out, tells you everything about who she is by the end. She chose well. even when choosing felt uncertain. Even when the person she was choosing had started as a contract and a performance and a practical necessity. She paid attention, and she trusted what she observed, and she was right. That's worth something, in a drama and outside of one. Okay, that is everything I have about this one. And I have given you a lot, which I think this drama deserves. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you. Genuinely. This was a long one, and you stayed with it, which means either the drama or the review, or both were worth your time. I hope it was both. Drop everything in the comments. The moment that hit you hardest, whether you saw the family twist coming, whether you were rooting for Liu Yanning from the beginning, or whether it took you a while to trust him, whether the ending felt earned to you or too neat. I want to know what you thought. I always do. Like if this was useful. Subscribe if you want more. And I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves out there. Actually, before I go, I want to talk about something that I think is easy to overlook in a drama like this, but that I find genuinely fascinating. And that's the question of what Yusing represents in the story. On the surface, he's the ex, the complicating figure, the man from the past who wants to reclaim something. In a lot of dramas, this character exists primarily to create jealousy and to give the male lead reasons to be possessive. He's an obstacle, essentially, a narrative device. But there's something more interesting going on with Yusing if you look at him carefully. He and Lianming have history. Real history, the kind that doesn't fully dissolve when a relationship ends. Whatever happened between them, and the drama gives us pieces of this rather than the whole picture. It mattered. It left a mark on both of them. He still carries it. She carries it too, differently, but she carries it. And the fact that he's now a professional colleague means that the history doesn't get to stay neatly in the past. It is present in the work, present in every meeting and every project and every moment when they have to interact as colleagues while also being people who once meant something else to each other. That's genuinely uncomfortable. And Yusing handles the discomfort badly, which is understandable even if it's not admirable. He wants what he had back. He sees Liu Yanning, sees the specific quality of Liu Yanning's attention to Lianming, the way he moves around her, the choices he makes that go beyond what a simple arrangement would require, and he understands that what he's looking at is a real threat to what he wants. Not because of the contract, because of what's developing inside the contract. The Cold War between Yusing and Liu Yanning is fascinating to watch